Hi, everyone, and welcome to the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast, where entrepreneurs help entrepreneurs grow faster, better, and stronger in the green industry. From leadership to sales to recruiting and operational excellence, we cover the topics holding entrepreneurs back and share how to get past those bottlenecks with the best in the industry. I'm your host, Rob Murray, co founder and CEO of Intrigue, a digital marketing company focused on helping landscape companies grow. So sit back and enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast. Today I have an awesome guest, Neal Glatt, on the show. Neal, thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
Neal has, like most guests, a very cool perspective on the green industry, being in it for quite some time and helping people like really ramp up sales. So what we're going to be going through today is definitely not a lesson of academia. This is going to be kind of field tested stuff that Neal not only has done in the past, but also teaches folks these days. He's a Gallup certified coach, co-founder of Grow the Bench, and owner of Neal Glatt, of course, self-entitled. Neal, again, thanks so much for doing this, man.
Yeah, man. I always love the opportunity to talk about sales. So it's who I am, sales guy.
Sweet. So then why don't you just take us through that quickly? Cole's note summary, where you started off in the green industry and, what you're up to today and what's going on now.
Yeah. So I got into the green industry because I graduated college in 2009. It was like a particularly crappy time to find a job. And I didn't know this industry was an industry. I was just looking for a sales gig and got introduced to the industry. Worked for a small company outside Detroit that was doing landscape and snow removal. Really liked the snow removal. I like the adrenaline rush of it, the logistics management. The green side, I wasn't really smart enough for. Like I couldn't wrap my head around all the plant names and how to take care of them and stuff. And so I made a remark to Phil Harwood, who's now my business partner at the time, and I said, I really love the snow, but not so much the green, and I'm not sure that this is going to be my home forever. What do you think? And he goes, you got to meet this guy, Jay Case, out of Boston, because he wants to do just snow. And so I did. And I ended up moving into Jason's guest room in July 2010 and worked for him for 7 years and took the company from one pickup truck to over $40 million a year in snow revenue.
That's
It
a
was
lot
a
of
wild,
snow, man.
it was a lot of snow. It was a wild ride. I got to work as part of, the greatest team ever, drive the sales effort with a lot of help, but also be able to have my hand in operations. So it was a lot of fun. And then in 2017, I decided to make a change and try and help some other companies and went on my own and wasn't really sure what that looked like. But today it's a few things. We have this great online education at growthebench.com, which is a fantastic, affordable, easy way to train mid managers and senior leaders at your company on green industry topics, everything from sales to management to hiring to succession planning. And it's all in short, digestible 15-minute videos that you can watch right on your phone.
Badass.
So that's really cool. We built out that library to several hundred videos. And then we do 2-day events with our Snow Fighters Institute brand, where we do just a 2-day deep dive into operations or management. We have 5 events a year with that all over the country. And then personally, I get to consult senior leaders and salespeople. And for companies who don't have a sales manager, I serve as their sales manager on a fractional basis. For companies who want to get their first salesperson, I make sure that they don't make a really expensive mistake. And for companies that are, doing okay, but just want to be doing better in terms of sales and profit, I help them, shoot through the stratosphere of results there.
Very cool, man. I appreciate that. That was a lot jam-packed in, a 2.5-minute description. It's very concise. So theme of the podcast is, what's the primary growth constraint, facing entrepreneurs in the green industry? So, we did a pre-call for this. I thought your perspective on it was pretty awesome, and no one's really mentioned this. This is, I think, interview number 18 or something like that, and no one's even come close to mentioning what you've mentioned.
I think I let the cat out of the bag, but I was going to say selling. And I know that you have so many people who are here talking about ability to hire and ability to inspire and ability to know what you're doing in the field. And like, they're right. Those are primary growth constraints, but it still starts with a sale, right?
Well, and I mean, and when you said it though, like if I ask you that question point blank, if you could articulate it a little bit, then we'll unpack the whole thing because
Yeah, yeah.
it's layered, right? So, what is the
So
primary
layered.
growth constraint you see for entrepreneurs in the green industry
The ability to sell your service
at the right
at the
price?
right price. Yes, at the right price.
Because anybody can sell cheap. I can hire
Correct.
kids from high school to take orders. But to be somebody that's in a position to maintain margin healthy enough to hire awesome people to do great work, it's a totally
Yeah.
different story. So what does that mean for you? Like how do you see that come into play? Where do you see people having issues?
So, a lot of times they get caught up in being compared to other companies' prices. And I've talked to way too many companies to know that so many people have no idea how to even estimate, right?
Yeah, so
And
let
so,
alone not even the sale part, just the actual pricing part.
yeah, so when you get told, oh, you're three times your competitor price, oh, you're 40% more, like that doesn't mean anything except that the other person doesn't know how to estimate, right? And so when that becomes the market price in your strategy for selling, it's really problematic. And then look at let's start with the issues that people face, right?
Yeah,
They can't pay enough, they can't pay people what they want to come work for them,
right.
right? They say there's nobody who wants to work, but in reality, they get plenty of applications and they say, oh, we're paying 20 an hour. And in their market, people are saying, I need 35,
Yeah.
right? That's because you didn't sell it for enough money. That's the only reason why.
Mhm.
If you had sold it for enough money to do the job, to pay the people, then you wouldn't have an issue finding your people, right? You're saying, oh, we have to lay people off. It's because you can't sell a different service. That's the only reason why,
Yeah.
right? Oh, we can't get enough equipment. Well, you can buy whatever you want, but it's expensive right now, right?
Yeah.
And so on and on down the line, it all comes to, do you have enough going in? And the problem is when you sign a contract, when you agree to do something for a price, that is the fixed best case scenario of your profitability.
Right.
And then there's all these other factors like weather, like productivity, like breakdowns, like warranty work that'll erode at it potentially, right? And things go wrong and that happens. But you can't ever outperform what you agreed to when the contract was signed.
Right.
There's a fixed profitability ceiling there. So the growth constraint really, right? What's the core issue of the constraint is, do I have enough money in this contract?
Right.
And most people are
And
not
margin, not just money, right?
correct, right? And most people are out there not getting enough profit and not being able to articulate their services in a way that make it justifiable. I
Yeah.
mean,
So I mean, well, and
it,
what you said though before too, right? Like this idea that everybody's looking like they're the same when someone's looking for a quote.
yeah,
We talk about this a lot too, like full service design, build, maintenance, landscaping company.
okay,
There's just no position with that position because
yeah,
everybody is a full service design, build, maintenance, landscape company. And so, what are some of the things that you help people understand and then implement to like kind of position themselves better out of the gate so that they're more of like the choice instead of like a choice?
yeah. So the first thing is make sure you're talking to the right type of people, the right potential customer, right? So Rob, you guys do amazing work with target marketing, right? That was your description of a process and your insistence on how important it is what made us become friends after we did an interview on a different podcast,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, these guys get it. You got to know exactly who you're going after, and that's it, because you have maximum value for one type of client, right?
Right.
And so
And maximum efficiency too, right? On the
that too,
operations side.
that also, right? Um, and they probably go hand in hand,
For
right?
sure.
But you got to figure out what your company actually does the best, and then who's going to value that the most. And those are the only people you should ever talk to.
I love it.
So I was just helping a company get into commercial snow sales the past few months, and they're like, man, I keep getting these leads for churches and they keep telling me I'm three times the person that they went with. And it's like, well, they're clearly not your target
Right.
because they're not valuing 24/7 service, right? They need service Sunday mornings and Wednesday afternoons, probably.
Right, right.
right?
And Christmas
A-
Eve.
And Christmas Eve. Yeah. And you keep losing to probably a parishioner who's like viewing this as their method of tithing, right? Like this
Mhm.
is their service, their give back to their community. So let's just make a rule that we don't even talk to these people. We politely explain the fact that every single time we've ever tried to talk to someone, they only seem to want service a little bit at a time. And we really are built around total service all the time. And you could probably find someone in your congregation to do this at a fraction of what I would charge you.
Yeah, it was a really cool perspective too, right? If you look at office buildings, they only need it 9 to 5, and
Right.
if you look at like a hospital, they need it 24/7. You look at hotels, they need it all the time. There's facilities that do need 24/7 maintenance. From that perspective that you're
Right.
referring to, right?
Right. So, I just got a question from another company that was like, hey, we're really struggling with the second shift. And it's like, well, who are your customers? What do they need? They describe this whole mix of customers. And to your point, they're kind of trying to run three different operations,
Mm,
right, at the same time. And then they're finding that it's difficult as a result. Right.
right.
And so, for most companies I talk to, there is essentially unlimited market. Like there's so much property, there's so much need for our services. This industry is so dense in terms of demand and so fractured in terms of supply that you're hard pressed to tell me and legitimately say like we own all of the potential market that we could possibly have.
Right, right, right.
The issue is you don't know how to break through and how to convey yourself in the right light to win those right contracts.
So
Somebody
then,
else is doing what you want.
so let's go through it then. Like, for an audience of entrepreneurs listening to this,
Yeah.
and they're like, I want to get started. I want to become better at sales. Like,
Perfect.
where do you start?
Okay. So number one is prove it with your daily behaviors. So are you calling people all day, every day? Because sales is hard work, man. I'm going to compare sales to something else that I do, which is running marathons. All right. Running a marathon is shockingly uncomplicated. All you have to do is for about 5 months, or if you're really fat like I was when I started, 11 months, run 4 or 5 days a week. That's
Right.
it. That's all you have to do. And it will get
It's
progressive.
simple,
It's so simple, right? You just
not
have to
easy.
do it every day. It's
Not
not
easy.
easy. So, are you going to have the discipline? I mean, I'm talking to people, I'm coaching them. We're setting a goal of 100 calls a week. That means 20 a day. You know how fast you can dial 20 phone numbers and talk to probably only 2 or 3 people?
Yeah, what you do? What, 10, 12 an hour?
More than that. I
Yeah,
mean,
15 an
I,
hour.
I need 1 to 2 hours of your day every day where you're going to give me all you got to sit down and face the rejection and make those phone calls.
Yeah.
Right. And you will improve at sales.
And this is all
But
very much commercially focused, right? B2B commercial
sure,
platform.
commercially focused, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If it's residential, you got to go hire Rob. You got to get set up on the, customer acquisition strategy with the pay to click and all that stuff. But you still, maybe it's homeowner networking or, cold call is just one example. There's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
whatever your lead gen is, but you got to do that every day. Someone tells me, oh, we can't cold call. We're doing networking. No problem, man. Are you networking every day?
Right.
Right? Like you can't be part of a monthly BNI meeting. You got to be part of like 18 of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then
So
and get out of the BNI group. But anyway,
that too,
different
right?
story. Different story. Different story.
Yeah. Well, effectiveness is the second thing. But honestly, I don't even care about effectiveness. The people who show up every day ineffectively will outperform the ones who try and just do one effective thing once a month because their
Oh,
headspace
that's
isn't
such a
right.
good perspective, though, right?
Totally.
And it's same thing. You go to the gym. I don't even care if you know what you're doing. If you go to the gym every day, you're gonna get in shape.
Every day.
If you have great form and you go once a month, it ain't happening.
Correct.
I love it.
Correct.
Love
Yeah.
it.
So show me with your daily behaviors. I don't need all day. It's the 80-20 rule all the time. I just want 20% of your time to be focused on driving 80% of sales efforts.
Yeah.
And that's all I care about. And there's real science to back this up, right? So when you interact with a potential customer, right? Any sort of touch point, and that could be the postcard, the web page, the email, the cold call. Like any interaction you have, your chance of a sale increases with every interaction through at least 8 interactions.
Right.
Most salespeople abandon after 1.5 interactions.
Yeah, isn't that insane, eh?
Right. I talk to salespeople all the time. They go, "Oh, I called them and they didn't answer." Okay. Okay. They go, "Did you leave a voicemail?" I said, "No." I go, "So you did nothing. You didn't even send a potential flare out there for them to see or hear."
Yeah.
Right.
Nothing.
Why wouldn't we leave a voicemail?
Yeah.
Like somebody's going to see a missed call and maybe with a company name and feel so desperate they're going to call you back right now. No, they would have already called you, man. That's
Yeah.
an inbound situation, right? So we call people every single day. If that feels aggressive, call them every single week,
Right.
right? And I want my salespeople to be super, super aggressive in their behaviors and then the nicest people ever in their conversation,
Very cool.
right? So like every single call. And by the way, this is personal and professional for me. If I called you next week, if we were hanging out, have yourself, we're gonna be at the same show. I want to have dinner with you, Rob, just to hang out. I'm gonna call you. You're gonna answer the phone. You probably will see my name. You'll be like, "Oh, hey Neal, what's up?" And I'd be like, "Hey Rob, not much. I'm not catching a bad time, am I?"
Always, yeah. Never.
When I
Good.
call my wife, I ask her if I'm not catching her at a bad time, am I?
Right.
Right? It's so ingrained.
Respectful.
It's respectful. And this is why people hate salespeople because they're disrespectful. They call you at the office and then you tell them, now it's not great. And they go, "Oh, no problem. Let me talk as fast as possible to try and tell you your pitch in a last ditch effort. And I'll completely ignore what you said."
Right. Yeah, that's great. Well, and it's so beautiful too, right? We always talk about this thing that people hate to be sold, but they love to buy.
Yeah,
So it's like, how do you create an environment of people buying things instead of trying to push shit on people?
100%.
That's
Yeah. So we are going to be super aggressive to get them live and do an interaction. And then we're going to be so on their schedule in terms of getting permission. And when they go, "Now's not a great time," be like, "No problem. When should I call you back?"
yeah,
And half the time they're like, "I don't even know what this is regarding yet." Be like, "Well, yeah, no problem, but it's not a good time. So when should I call you back?"
yeah, yeah. You want me to call
Right.
you back like later this afternoon or tomorrow morning?
Do whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Um, and when someone says, "I'm not interested, don't ever call me again," like, I promise I won't. We will put a whole thing in our CRM. We'll never call you and we'll respect that. Right.
That's cool.
So
So you got behaviors, pig-headed discipline,
totally,
and then
totally.
and then you got people that are like, well, cold calling doesn't work. Every time I call somebody, they always hang up the phone, they always slam the phone, they're always angry, blah blah blah. Cold calling doesn't work. So then you
Technique.
transition into this technique and this, being polite.
Yep.
What are some of the things that, what do you say to the people, the naysayers that say things like calling people doesn't work?
The naysayers don't have enough calls to show me it doesn't work. I mean, just listen. If you give me 3 weeks of solid discipline, real discipline, and positive effort, and it doesn't work, like, I will refund you my consulting fees.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we can work on whatever you want to do, and for sure, it's not every market. You have to know how to approach your market,
Sure.
right?
Well,
You're probably not calling homeowners that way.
sure, but honestly, though, it reminds me of this story. So there was this insurance company on the West Coast, and they hired a consultant to come in and to find out why they were flat in sales. This is like $100 million plus insurance company with like whatever 50, 60 salespeople. Who knows? Anyway, the consultant comes in, 72 hours, 3 days working on this thing, comes back and he says, "You're not making enough calls."
Yep.
And they're like, "You got to be shitting me. We just paid you X dollars, like, 5 figures for 3 days, whatever it was, to tell us we're not making enough calls. Like, get out of here." He's like, "No, no, I'll prove it to you. You give me mid salespeople, mid performance salespeople, put me into a cold neighborhood. They're selling life insurance." So he takes 10 people in the middle of the pack and they go cold call knocking on doors in a cold neighborhood, residential door knocking. And their script is, you wouldn't happen to be looking for life insurance, would you?
Yeah.
And they can do about eight doors an hour, or 10 doors an hour for 8 hours, about 80 doors a day per person. So 800 doors a day. and they're signing up between 5 and 10 policies a day.
Absolutely.
It comes back after a week, and they've got whatever, between 25 and 50 new policies with this group on 1 week in a cold neighborhood.
Yeah. And they're super respectful about it. And you know what I love is like when with that specifically, they are abandoning a dead sale as quickly as possible.
Yeah, go run.
One question, yes or no. If the answer is no, they're just going next door.
Yeah.
And what I see in this industry all the time is phenomenal workmanship. I mean, pure artistry in whatever it is, right? If you're design, if you're horticulture care, if it's hardscapes, if it's snow removal, like, I mean, amazing technical work. And you assume, or people assume, that that's what the customer actually wants. And it just isn't that. And I hear all the time, oh man, Brightview's got this account and they suck and we do so much better. And I don't understand why I can't just get in the door. You're assuming that's what the customer wants.
Right.
And it's not necessarily the case.
So then what do you do as a salesperson trying to figure out what a customer wants? That's a good, perspective to take.
Yeah. So I would ask your existing customers first, what do they actually value that you do? Right. So we all have those customers who are like, you're amazing. Like every time you interact with them, they're like, man, we love giving you money.
Right.
Right. And I would sit down with each of them and say, why exactly? Because that list is probably different than how you view your business.
Cool.
And if you can start
simple to do.
So simple.
And nobody does it.
Nobody does it. And once you start to get to that, then, and I also, by the way, asked them, where can I find more people like you? That changed my whole trajectory case. I was sitting down with a director of facilities for a national pharmacy. And he goes, you're our favorite vendor. And I said, you're our favorite customer. What a coincidence. Where could I find more people like you? Specifically, people who manage hundreds of locations that are relatively small. Mm-hmm. And he gave me the name of a trade show that I didn't know existed.
Very cool.
And we started going to that, and it was like endless opportunity.
Awesome.
Right. So like your good customers really want to help you. They will tell you exactly why. They'll tell you exactly where to find them. And, there's a whole technique for asking for referrals too. But I think that once you can start to think of it in terms of what the customer actually wants, then you can go to potential customers and you can say, listen, we do this service and people tend to value this about it. Is that something that tracks for you? And you could have 2 or 3, right?
Yeah.
So when I was selling commercial snow removal to hospitals, right? An example you mentioned, I knew to talk about 2 or 3 things at every single hospital. I would talk about, first of all, most important, the ambulance drop-off area being clear all the time.
Right.
Because the ambulances are third parties. They're technically customers. They would come into the emergency room and start complaining. And that would just be this chain of command that always rained down crap on the facility guy. Right. And they had no problem doing it because they weren't employed by the hospital. They had no ownership there. So I would talk about that, the importance of it for, the medical treatment that people need in an emergency, but also the complaints that people would get. I would talk about the importance of shift change being this, 1 hour window 3 times a day that was just slammed with people coming and going,
right?
Where you really need the points locked in. And then the last thing I would talk about is the handicap access. You got people coming and going in wheelchairs and walkers who are, barely stable in their mobility.
In good weather, let alone.
In good weather, yeah. Right? And the importance of this one specific area all the time, right? Mostly during business hours. And facility managers would say stuff like, it's like you know us. Right. It's like you've heard the meetings we've had, right? Awesome. I knew because we did hospitals that was the most important, right? Versus when I would go talk to a chain of multiple locations, right? Honestly, the service was like 5th or 6th on their list. They wanted verification of service more than service.
Whoa, like we want to know you did the job.
We want to know the job was done.
Yeah.
We want to know how much the bill is going to be as quick as possible. right? Because imagine the difficulty of coordinating 1,000 locations and all these services being done every which time,
Yeah.
right? Based on the weather, and all that spend getting wrapped up, and the cash flow that you're going to request as a facility manager for all of those,
Right.
right? And you tell accounting that you need, $2 million, and then you need $3.5 million, and the public stock takes a hit because the projections are off.
I
The
mean, it's pretty
biggest
significant.
problem
Yeah.
related to this service is not the service.
Very cool.
But I knew that because I talked to enough of them and they
Right.
told me about it.
Well, I think
Right.
that kind of goes back to what we were saying at the beginning of like when you start to work with the same type of facility in a commercial setting or in a residential setting, same type of customer and service, whatever it is that you're talking about, the repeatability. Now you're talking to 50 folks that have the same problem. They're one person with the same problem. They don't know about the other 50 that have the same problem. And now you become an expert and understand their problems better than they do. And
Yeah.
just through your questions and talking points, you can demonstrate that you understand them and build trust without having to say, trust me.
Correct. And through all of your continued account management or your problems that you're solving, you're just learning that this is a problem, and then you're implementing that for all your other customers as part of your process improvement, and they're yours for your life. Right.
Epic. So talk to me about sales process.
Yeah.
What people have, what they don't have, where do they start? What do you see that works? Like, what does sales process look like for you?
Yeah. So almost nobody has one in our industry, right? And all a sales process is the series of steps that we're going to follow to convert someone from a prospect, someone we think we could do business with, to a customer, right? Someone who's paying us and referring us. And so typically that's 4 or 5 steps. Um, One is taking a really good guess at who's a potential customer, right? Not going so far beyond just, oh, they have a lot of landscape to manage,
Right.
right? To more of that demographic type of stuff. Here's what they care about. Here's the issues that they're facing.
Business type, facility type, could acres type of land? Is it like
Sure.
is it
Size is a
graded,
qualifier.
flat, whatever?
Yep. Definitely where they're located, right?
Yep.
So I get people who tell me, "Oh, Detroit metro area." I don't know what that means. Your salespeople are confused, and then they're chasing opportunities and coming back, and they're like, "Oh, this is actually outside the target." Well,
Right.
target geography needs to be more concrete than metro area or
Right.
Chicago
Right.
loop or whatever, right? So I draw a damn map, and
Yeah.
it's like I don't. If this street is the edge of the map, I don't want you going to somebody across the street.
Right. Yeah. I want the east side of the street, not the west side of the street.
Whatever we decide is what it is, but draw a single line. So either when a sale comes back or a potential opportunity comes back, we're super excited, or it doesn't even enter the room. Right? It's just efficiency in the process.
So there's like these success factors that people need to establish when trying to identify a quality prospect.
Yeah, I have 6 factors of qualification, and geography is one, average sale size is one, type of service, type of problem, right? If you go, we have a free course, by the way, on Grow the Bench for intro to sales that'll get you set up with all of this. And walk you through what a process looks like. So anyway, identify the right person that you can really service the most profitably.
Yep.
Right. Then engage with them. This is that lead gen. It could be cold call. It could be LinkedIn message. It could be postcard. It could be networking. It could be a referral. It could be door knocking. It could be email messaging or white papers or lunch and learns. Like, I don't care how you engage. There's so many options.
Yeah.
Just engage up to 8 times, right? Like that's the process. Up to 8 interactions before we give up. And then you go and you talk to them, and you have a suspicion that they fit your market, but you don't know for sure yet. And you have to qualify. You have to make sure that they actually qualify. And there will be times where you take a meeting with someone you think is great, and you walk away saying, you know what, we're actually not a fit for each other.
Which is cool.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Right. And if they're a fit, then you go through some sort of estimating process. You get them a quote, you give them a presentation, and you close the deal and you get referrals, right? So those are like the big steps of a sales process. And at every single gate, you should be tracking your metrics, and you should have a pass-through rate. And if you were to work backwards from a sales goal, you will know how many of those calls you have to make per week. Exactly.
Yeah, it's quite simple, really. Once you start understanding your numbers and your ratios, it becomes a mathematical equation, right?
Yeah. And you can get better with some technique over time,
Yeah.
but you have to establish a baseline of performance first.
Okay. So, I mean, that's cool. Identify, engage, qualify, estimate, quote, present, close, and refer. I
Yeah.
mean, um, it's so simple, but like, if there's a note to take away from this, it's that. So, if you're listening, please, identify who you need to go. 6 factors of success. Engage with them any way you want. Cold call, LinkedIn, door knocker, lunch and learn, whatever. Qualify them. Get an estimate, quote and present it. Close the deal and get some referrals. Like,
Do you know the amount of sales more that a company with a formalized sales process has than those who don't?
it's got to be
It,
staggering. I don't know.
it's 37% more sales.
Yeah,
Like
that's
if
just
you
with discipline. It's like you're not even doing more. You're just discipline.
you just discipline, like if you just fill in the gaps, even if it's like not good, right? Like, listen, if you hire me, I'll come in, I'll help you do this whole thing. It's expensive. It'll be awesome. You don't have to do that. Like you just take those things and take your best guess at it and everybody stick to that plan and work it every day. You'll probably increase your sales 20 to 30%.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So process, we got discipline. Tell me about think it over for salespeople.
Uh,
Let me get back to you. Let me think about it.
yeah. So this is a sales process gone awry. Okay. So we know that people are going to do that, right? And I want my salespeople to be cutting them off before they do. And so that's not rude. That's driving this bus, right? And all that means is, hey, Rob, um, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to come out. We're going to talk about this. I'm going to give you a proposal. And then what do you have to do on your end to decide whether we move forward or not? What does your process look like?
Oh,
Right.
I'm good. I'm the decision maker. Just me. No big deal. I
Cool.
got it.
So how will you make your decision?
Well, I'm going to look at your quote and the other quote, see if your stuff lines up. If it's close, I think you guys are good. You're probably going to get the business. Maybe call
All right.
reference.
Yeah, we're not going to be close. We're going to be like 20% more.
Well, I mean, why are you so much more?
Well, why do you think?
Oh, that's such a good one.
Right? Like we can keep going with this. The
No, it's
point is,
good though. People need to hear it though, right?
let's talk about it before we get to think it over.
Yeah, I love it.
Right? And if the answer is, then the other questions are like, do you have the other quotes? If you don't have them, then you can't decide. So why am I going to give you mine?
I love it.
Right? And it's not tenuous. It's not this problem for people if you just talk about it beforehand. When what I observe is that salespeople have a lot of power right now in the trades up until the point where they hand over the quote.
Right.
Right. Like, how many times have you heard, we can't get anybody to bid? You're our only bidder. I can't believe you answered the phone or actually came out here. It's like, don't sacrifice that power without getting the information you want.
Yeah.
So for some companies, here's what we did, right? They don't want to go visit with everybody. They're calling on people. I've got salespeople calling 5 states away, right? They're not going to take the trip out. And so they go, and they also can't just like spit out the price to qualify because they have to go do the whole estimate. So they'll tell the prospect, yeah, Rob, we're going to send you this probably next week. It'll take us about a week to work on it. We'll email it over. Say, great. Then when it's done, they call you up and say, hey, I'm just finishing up. I do have one quick question for you. And then on the phone, they surprise you with, hey, so I'm thinking it's going to be 27,000. What are your thoughts? Just to get your reaction.
Right.
Right. Just to see if there's anything we need to change, to ask that question. How's it compare? What are your other quotes? At some point, we're going to be like, if nobody else is giving you a quote, then what are you doing? Is it ours?
Right.
Also, why do you need other quotes? Isn't this a service you've been buying for years and years and years? How do you not know what this costs?
Right.
Didn't you put a budget in for this like 8 months ago?
Well, we got to tone down our nurture voice a little bit, right? Or tone down. Like,
I'm not
what do you?
talking to a prospect like that,
Yeah, of
right?
course not. That's I know.
No, but this is my internal voice,
Right,
right?
because that's the reality of the situation. Don't BS me. Let's shoot straight and talk about things the way they're supposed to be talked about.
Yeah, and my personality is pretty abrasive like that, so it works for me actually
Right.
all the time, right? People are like, "Hey, man, I can't, Neal, I can't say to a prospect what you just said." Great, then let's figure out what you're gonna say.
Right.
But we're not gonna come away with no answer. And when my salespeople come to me, I'm probably gonna maybe somebody was interested and they're going to say this and they're going to be like, all right, I'm not calling that guy. That's fine. Right. Like when I'm your sales manager, man, you're going to feel way more pressure from me
Than any prospect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was their budget? Oh, I didn't ask. What do you mean?
Well, we had our sales team when we started off. It got to the point where they're like, "What is your budget?" And they're like, "I don't know." And they're like, "I can't go back to the office without the budget because Rob's going to grind me
100%,
and
man.
no one's going to do anything to estimate anything unless we get a budget."
Yeah.
It's like when in doubt, blame the boss, right?
Always, dude.
Yeah.
Like, guys, you can blame me without even hiring me. You can be like, I volunteer to be your sales coach, without actually being hired as the scapegoat. If it helps you sell more, I'm that committed to your success here.
That's great.
Right. So I think that's it. And yeah, to a prospect, it's gotta be like, well, did you have a budget planned? Like, did you submit a number to accounting?
Yeah.
Can you show me last year's quote?
Like people are like even on the residential side, right? Like people are like, do you have a budget? They're like, no, I don't know. I don't have a budget. I'm like, okay, well, it's gonna be $1 million.
Sure.
They're like, oh, that's way too much. I'm like, okay, well, it's gonna be $1,200. Like that seems really cheap. I'm like, so what number do you have in your mind?
Yeah.
Because you think one's too expensive and you think one's too cheap. So you've got something. I just need to help you say it.
And if I'm doing a residential design build, right, I might say something like, listen, you want a 10 by 20 patio? No problem. We have done them for as cheap as 20,000 and as much as 200,000. Yeah. It depends a lot on if you want your material flown in from Italy or you want something from Home Depot, right? And it depends on how many built-in kitchens you want, and light fixtures, and on and on.
Yeah, the variables go on and on.
So help me help you.
Yeah, build the parameters for us to figure out this together.
Where do you see yourself within that range? Now, when I was doing commercial snow removal, and I suspect the same is true for like basic landscape maintenance, you can probably look at a property and get really close to the number. Right. You can go in and be like, it's got to be around 20,000.
Yeah.
And so in that case, I would say, hey, we've done properties like this for this type of work that range anywhere. Sometimes they're between 15 and 20.
The I Am Landscape Growth Podcast brought to you by Intrigues.
Where do you see yourself
marketing
in those
needs
buckets?
predictable results for
and
entrepreneurs.
I make the
Remember to like
barrier,
and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the next episode. And if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please visit intriguemedia.com and click on podcast. What does it tell you if they go with the lower versus the high?
Well, it forces them to choose above and beyond, as opposed to in that range. It doesn't really tell me anything, right? So if it's below, if they say, oh, definitely under 20, then I'm like, I'm not sure we can actually make this happen. I can have that conversation with them right away. Right. If they're like 20, 25, like, oh, great. We're probably in business here.
Yeah, that's cool, man. So one of the things you kind of mentioned too is that like, hey, Neal, I can't say it like that. Or sometimes people will come back and they won't get the answers that they need. And, from our experience, it's usually something holding them back between the ears. Like there's the saying, right? Sales isn't between you and the prospect, it's between you and your parents.
Yeah.
So
yeah, very true.
What do you say to folks that are like, having a hard time being a little gutsy in the moment, standing their ground? People pleasers can often be what seemingly great salespeople, but actually can't close a deal.
Correct.
Like, what do you see with that stuff?
Well, it depends on the issue, because that stuff, like I roll out a sales assessment and we actually have like 78 individual self-limiting beliefs that we have to attack that all kind of are encapsulated by that stuff. Right.
Yeah.
So,
but I think, but can you just speak to that broadly then? I mean, you said 70, you just said 78 limited beliefs that can hold us back if we hold them, right?
Yes.
And I think a lot of people, you give someone a script, you give them a list, and like, okay, go be a great salesperson. But really, that there's these 78 things that are like really detrimental to making
They may
somebody
or may not be
successful.
there. Yeah. Yeah.
So what is that? What is that for folks, just to help them understand what that means?
So, that could be $1 million is a lot of money, right? And if you think that's true, like you're never going to sell $1 million contract, because every single prospect, by the way, like just to back up a second, my experience in sales was $20 lawn cuts. Okay. In
Right.
Southeast Michigan, to my biggest contract ever was over $5 million piece of paper. Right.
Sweet.
At every price point, including those two, the process was exactly the same. Okay. At $5 million, they were like, we got to get our VP involved. At $20, they're like, my wife needs to sign off on this.
Right. Same
Okay.
process.
Same process. Both of them said literally, that's a lot of money.
Right.
Okay. Both of them, 3 meetings.
Right.
It's just the scale is the same. It's whether you believe that's a lot of money or not. And in both cases, I'm like, a lot of money. This is a screaming deal, man.
Right.
The amount of service that we're going to provide for what you're paying is the highest value you can possibly encounter. I need to make sure that they feel that way.
Yeah. That's
right.
Cool.
So that's one, like and there's a threshold. So sometimes we see people who are amazing salespeople, maybe that life insurance company, right? They could crush it. Top salesperson ever, but they could only ever get people to spend $40 a month.
Right.
Because after that, it's too much money. They're uncomfortable. Right. Some people think it's not polite to talk about money.
Right.
Some
If you grow
people,
up around a dinner table where, you ask your dad how much he makes and he smacks you upside the head,
yeah,
it can be difficult to talk to people about money.
some people think it's really prudent to take a lot of care in your decision-making buying process, and then they let customers do the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. They
One
think
to
it's
one. Isn't it 1-to-1? People sell the way they buy.
correct, right? So some people think it's okay to get multiple quotes. Some people think you're being irresponsible if you don't.
Right.
Right. I'm telling a customer, why would you possibly need another quote?
Yeah, like we're gonna crush it for you. You're just gonna waste your time.
Exactly. Total waste of time. You can find someone cheaper if that's what's important, but you told me it's not. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking right now.
Yeah.
Right. So some people think that prospects are honest all the time. Right. They just believe what they say,
I don't think they're maliciously lying. They just
No,
lie.
they do.
Like they don't even know they're lying until
Sure.
later on. They're like, yeah, this is great. I'll call you Tuesday, and then they're just lying because they just forget about it. But anyway,
I
I think
can't
it's
figure out
fascinating.
why salespeople don't set up calendar invites for that stuff. Come on, man.
Killing
Like
me, Smalls.
yeah, dude. Hey, we'll talk on Tuesday at 3:00. Okay, I'll send you a calendar invite and I'll
No
see
problem.
you there.
Yeah.
Promise.
Yeah.
Like but how do we fix it? I think that you need a coach who knows what's happening. Okay. Or you need to, most of the time when it's happening, you don't realize it's happening. And I have these too, by the way, right?
Yeah, well, me too. I've just become conscious of them and then decided to tell them to be quiet.
Correct. Right. And to learn a tactic or a little script that you go into. Here's my, I'll go from, hey, Neal, you're super harsh to, wow, that's the nicest, easiest thing you could possibly say. Right. Which is, could sound something like this if it's around budget. Hey, Rob, I'm hoping you can help me with a little issue that I have.
Yeah, of course. What's up?
So my sales coach tells me that I have to ask you for a budget. I'm kind of nervous about it. I don't like talking about money, but would you help me ask you for a budget number?
Yeah, that's no problem. We can talk about it. That's beautiful though, right?
It's so beautiful. Like people love to help people and they will help you if you can quickly build rapport with them. Right. Yeah. So get an assessment, get a coach, become aware of it, and then you can figure out how to make it work. The other thing I'll say is, there's a idea of using strengths-based or personality-based or behavior-based advantage here. And so for me, like one of the worst things I could possibly do is try and learn as much as I can about customers. It's just not my behavioral style. I'm way better off the cuff, being in the flow. Like that's how I do things. And there's people who are the polar opposite, and they really should research as much as they can about customers before going in. It will help them be their best. And so that's a different assessment that we use. I use Gallup strengths-based selling
Yeah.
to help people do that.
Very cool.
And then my job as a coach is to be like, all right, here's what we have to accomplish. We have to get a budget number. We have to get a decision time frame, right? And here's how we might be able to do that for you.
Yeah.
Right. So here's what I would say, but that's going to sound really wrong to you. You're not going to get there. Let's figure out what you will say. And then, you know what? Go home, rehearse it, practice in a mirror, record yourself, make it that automatic saying that sounds so natural that it works for you.
Yeah, that's magic, man. So, I mean, we covered a lot, right? From discipline, to consistent, ineffective sales, beating out effective, inconsistent sales efforts.
Yeah.
Sales process, this whole idea of thinking it over and getting ahead of it, understanding the people, the self-limited beliefs. Like, there's a ton here, Neal. I really appreciate you bringing this up. If someone wants to get a hold of you, though, and maybe engage, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, my cell is 805-340-9311. Feel free to text me or call me. You can email me at Neal, Neal, at growthebench.com. You can also check out Grow the Bench. Coming up, I'll be at the Pro Green Expo in Denver, and I'll be at iLandscape in Chicago. So those would be cool opportunities if you're in those markets to connect in person as well.
Cool.
LinkedIn is always great also. So
awesome, man. And one last thing to leave the audience with, a resource, author, speaker, somebody that you've been following or has had a big impact in terms of, how you think about the way the world works.
Yeah. John Maxwell is absolutely my favorite guy ever. I'm a certified John Maxwell speaker, trainer, coach. And my personal sales coaches have leveraged a lot of Maxwell's content as well. So I think it's all about delivering maximum value, right, through selling. But I'm going to recommend another one, which is far more tactical to the point, called Giftology is the book.
Cool.
John Ruhlin.
Yeah.
Fantastic
awesome,
approach to gifting to gain influence.
He's a Canadian, isn't he?
I think he lives in Ohio, but maybe he's Canadian.
I'm gonna check this out quick.
Giftology is great.
I'm just looking for anybody. Anytime that there's a Canadian, right, we got to find somebody.
All right.
I'm just joking.
He did a lot of work with the guy who was really successful at what's the junk removal service?
Yeah, Brian Scudamore. When he
Yes.
got junk.
Yeah. So they're like friends, and he tells a story about him. So maybe that's the connection.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah.
All good. Cool. All right, sweet. Thank you for doing this. As always, just bringing the value in a big way. I'm sitting here stuck trying to verify if this guy's Canadian. I don't know. I can't tell. Whatever.
That's the story that stuck with me, is how he got the attention of Brian Scudamore with gifting, which is cool. I'm not going to spill the beans. You have to get the book to read the story, but it's remarkable.
Cool, man. Thanks again for doing this, everybody, for listening to the episode. Neal Glatt, you're a gem. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks.
The I Am Landscape Growth Podcast is brought to you by Intrigue, where passionate marketing meets predictable results for entrepreneurs. Remember to like and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the next episode. And if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please visit intriguemedia.com and click on podcast.